The disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 on March 8, 2014 wasn't just another aviation mystery.
Yep.
It really became the definitive, most baffling aviation mystery of our time.
It really did. An entire Boeing 777 with 239 people on board just gone.
Vanished. And even now, after all these years and the largest, most expensive search in history,
News tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight
MH370
Flight MH370
disappeared en route to Beijing.
the central enigma is still there.
Exactly. And the sources we've compiled, the official reports, the scientific papers, the new independent proposals, they all point to two core truths. We know with almost unshakable science where the plane ended up.
But not why.
But not why. The reason for its path remains completely elusive.
So our mission today is to take all that data, all that speculation, and just distill the critical facts for you.
Yeah.
We want to understand what the plane actually did after it went dark, how the seventh arc was found, and why this whole thing hinges on connecting, deliberate human action with some kind of catastrophic failure.
Right. Let's start with the timeline, the core facts. The flight leaves Kuala Lumpur at 12:42 a.m. destination, Beijing. It's a standard overnight flight.
Everything's normal.
Everything is completely routine, right down to the last message air traffic control gets. Zero 1.19 a.m. It's just a calm, simple, good night, MAS 370.
Okay, let's unpack this a little. That message comes right as the plane is moving from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace.
Yeah.
And then, what, 2 minutes later?
Just 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., MH370 is gone from civilian radar. The transponder goes dark. The signals just stop.
But here's where, according to the reports, the tragedy is compounded by a huge systemic failure.
Oh, absolutely. The disappearance itself was a crisis, but the response was, well, a disaster. The sources all highlight this critical 4-hour delay before any real emergency response got going.
4 hours. Why so long?
Air traffic controllers in both countries, Malaysia and Vietnam, they took time to realize the plane wasn't just handed over. They thought it was a communication issue.
So they assumed the other guys were handling it.
Basically, yeah. And for an aircraft at cruising speed, 4 hours is an eternity. By the time they figured out it wasn't a glitch, the plane was hundreds of miles away in a totally unexpected direction.
Which means the initial search effort
Was focused on the wrong ocean. They were looking for wreckage where the plane was supposed to be, not where it actually was. That delay cemented the mystery from the very beginning.
So that initial mistaken search, it was corrected by one critical piece of evidence, right? The military radar.
Yes. And this is what just shattered every assumption. This wasn't a simple crash in the South China Sea.
It was something else entirely.
The military's primary radar tracked a ghost path. For over an hour after it vanished from civilian screens, the military could still see it. And that data revealed the plane made a sharp, deliberate 180-degree turn.
A U-turn, basically.
A U-turn. It flew back across the Malay Peninsula, almost hugging the border between Malaysia and Thailand, which some people think suggests it was trying to avoid detection.
And this wasn't a minor course correction. We're talking about flying in the exact opposite direction of Beijing.
Exactly westward. Over the Strait of Malacca, past the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and then it just flew on, silently, for hours.
That one intentional move, I mean, that's the biggest piece of evidence suggesting a conscious act, right? Someone was in control after the communications went dead.
Something or someone decided that plane was not going to Beijing. It was heading out into the vastness of the southern Indian Ocean.
And what a challenge for the search teams. You're not looking for an accident near a flight path anymore.
No, you're trying to find a plane that purposefully went dark, flew thousands of kilometers off course, and then vanished a second time. It forces you to rely entirely on, well, ghost data and physics.
So the military radar only gets you so far. What happens next? How do you find it in all that ocean?
Well, the breakthrough came from a system that wasn't even designed for tracking. It came from automatic satellite handshakes.
Right, and it's important to get a bit technical here, Sorry, because handshakes sound simple, but the science is incredible. These weren't voice calls or data.
No, not at all. They were just these intermittent pings, 7 of them in total, that the plane's satellite unit sent out automatically to an Inmarsat satellite, even when everything else was off.
And these pings gave investigators 2 crucial pieces of data: BTO and BFO.
Exactly. The burst timing offset, or BTO, and the burst frequency offset, BFO, those were the keys.
Okay, let's break that down. BTO is a simpler one.
It is. BTO basically measures the time it takes for the signal to travel from the plane to the satellite and back. So with that, you can calculate the distance. It gives you a huge circle on the globe where the plane must have been at that moment.
A circle, but not a specific point on that circle.
Right, and that's where BFO comes in, the frequency offset. This is where it gets really clever.
This is the Doppler effect thing, isn't it? Like a siren changing pitch.
Perfect analogy. The BFO data measures that shift in the signal's frequency, and that told investigators the plane's relative speed and direction. Was it moving towards the satellite or away from it?
So you take those 7 pings with their BTO and BFO data.
And you can plot 7 successive circles showing where the plane was for each ping. The last one, the 7th ping, is the end of the line.
The end point.
Yes. That final ping defines the flight's ultimate limit. Investigators then combine that satellite data with the plane's known fuel capacity and its likely speed. And that calculation, that synthesis, is what defined the 7th arc.
So the 7th arc isn't a single spot. It's, what, a line of probability?
Precisely. It's a huge curved line in the southern Indian Ocean, about 2,000 kilometers west of Perth, Australia. It's the area where the plane most likely ran out of fuel and came down.
And the scale of that is just overwhelming. The initial search zone along that arc was the size of California.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And it explains why the official underwater searches, even costing $160 million, came up empty.
And yet, despite those failures, the science behind the 7th arc is considered solid.
It is, and that's because of the physical evidence, the debris. We've had 27 pieces confirmed as being from MH370 wash up on shores all across the Indian Ocean.
Like the famous flaperone on Reunion Island.
That was the big one, yes. And ocean drift analysis modeling how those pieces would travel on the currents confirms they would have originated from a crash site right along that 7th arc. The math and the physical proof line up.
So the science tells us where. Now we have to shift to the why.
Exactly. Why did this happen?
Our sources really dive into 3 primary theories. Let's start with the one that gets the most headlines. Pilot suicide.
This theory suggests the captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, intentionally crashed the plane. And the main piece of evidence, which the FBI found very compelling, was found on a flight simulator in his home.
What did they find on it?
They recovered deleted data points that showed a simulated flight path, a path almost identical to the one MH370 took deep into the southern Indian Ocean. The implication being he had practiced it.
Wow. I mean, if that evidence is so strong, why isn't this case closed?
Well, this is where it gets tricky. You have to weigh that against the man himself. His colleagues described him as a highly respected, very seasoned pilot. Over 18,000 flight hours.
No red flags.
No documented history of mental illness, no major financial problems, nothing that would point to a motive for mass murder-suicide. So you have this compelling technical evidence, the simulator, up against compelling character evidence.
Data versus disposition. It's impossible to be certain. Okay, what about the second theory? Hijacking.
That was the immediate fear, of course. Especially when it was discovered that 2 Iranian passengers had boarded using stolen passports.
That sounds like a huge red flag for terrorism.
It did, but Interpol looked into it pretty quickly, and their conclusion was that these men were almost certainly asylum seekers, just trying to get to Europe, not terrorists.
So that theory fizzled out, which brings us to the third one, and the one that most experts seem to land on, hypoxia.
Yes, hypoxia, or oxygen deprivation. This is considered the most probable theory because it provides a mechanism for the plane to fly for hours on its own.
How would that work?
The theory goes that some kind of catastrophic event happened, maybe a slow electrical fire or a rapid depressurization that caused a loss of oxygen in the cockpit and cabin.
So the crew and passengers would have just passed out.
They'd fall unconscious. And if this event happened after that initial 180-degree turn was made, the plane would just keep flying on autopilot.
A ghost flight.
A ghost flight. Locked onto a heading, flying for about 7 hours until it ran out of fuel and crashed right along the 7th arc. It fits the data perfectly.
So the experts lean towards this idea of a technical problem incapacitating the crew and the plane just flying itself to its end.
It's the most logical path, yes. But, and this is the tension in the mystery, it still has one big problem.
The turn.
The turn. The flight was passive for the last 7 hours, but it started with a very deliberate, very sharp 180-degree turn.
Right. If hypoxia was the cause, it must have happened after that turn. So who made the turn, and why didn't they radio for help? They flew right over airports they could have landed at.
And that's the powerful question. Was the turn a desperate attempt to get back to land before the crew was overcome? Or was the turn part of a plan that was then interrupted by a technical failure? It's the missing piece.
The official search may have ended, but independent researchers haven't given up. There was a really fascinating proposal in 2022 from an aerospace engineer, Richard Godfrey.
Right, Godfrey's work with WSPRnet, this is a completely different approach. WSPRnet is this huge global network of amateur radio signals, the Weak Signal Propagation Reporter Network.
And how can amateur radio signals from today help find a plane that vanished in 2014?
Well, the network logs are all archived. The theory is that when a huge object, like a Boeing 777, flies through one of these radio signal paths, it creates a tiny disturbance, a ripple.
So he went back through the logs from that night.
And by cross-referencing thousands of these tiny disturbances with MH370's flight time, he claims he can actually trace the plane's exact route, hour by hour.
That's incredible. How specific is his claim?
Very specific. He believes the wreckage is on the 7th arc, about 4 kilometers underwater, and he's pinpointed a search area with a radius of just 40 nautical miles.
40 miles? That's tiny compared to the original search. So why hasn't a new search been launched?
It's important to remember this is still a novel methodology. It's innovative, for sure, but it's not universally accepted by the scientific community. Some experts think the data is too noisy, that his interpretation has wide margins of error. It's a compelling lead, but it doesn't have the same validation as the satellite data.
It really just summarizes the whole problem, doesn't it? The best metaphor I saw in the source material put it perfectly. Searching for MH370 is like trying to find a specific needle in a dark, shifting haystack,
while only knowing which gate the needle entered from. And that haystack is 4 kilometers deep, rugged, and totally unexplored. The 7th arc is the gate. It tells you the vicinity, but finding the needle is another challenge entirely.
So when you step back and look at this whole puzzle, what's the one key takeaway for all of us trying to understand this?
That the solution depends on connecting these few, incredibly sparse, but totally solid technical facts. You have the military radar showing that conscious 180-degree turn. You have the satellite handshakes defining the absolute limit of the 7th arc.
And the debris.
And the debris, the physical proof, confirming a crash somewhere along that arc. That technical convergence is really the only consensus there is.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to think about. If we accept the most probable theory, hypoxia, that the plane flew on autopilot, we still can't explain that first key factor, that sharp, deliberate 180-degree turn.
Exactly. Was that turn the final conscious act in that cockpit? A deliberate move to evade radar, or maybe a last desperate attempt to fly back to safety before the crew was overcome? It means that even in the most likely scenario of a passive automated flight, the whole mystery still begins with a question about human intention, right before the plane became a ghost.